administration is going to deal with me, but it will be really sad news if the United States, they are not to recognize the new body which is formed recently to take care of the Libyan interest. This is the new revolution, the new generation. And I think the United States, they've been listening to Gaddafi for many years. But now they have to listen to the voice of the people. They have to listen to the new council. And if they want to really support the democracy, support the change, and to recognize the lives that lost in fighting this brutal regime.
Because a change d'affaires is coming in to take your place, according to the Libyan regime. How do you think the US will be communicating with him? What will they try to get out of him?
Well, I think the United States should not recognize this, and I think that if they really, this is now put the United States in an accurate position. Then they're talking about democracy, about taking the freedom of speech. Then let us see how they're going to act.
So you think the way they respond will really expose what the US intentions really are?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Last time I spoke to you, it was a week ago,
yeah.
And you broke with the regime to me. It was quite emotional for you.
Yeah.
What do you think has been done in that time? We know that a no-fly zone is considered, some sort of military action to opposition groups is considered, sanctions are in place. Is that enough?
No, it is not enough. The United Nations resolution is a good step in the right direction, but this is dealing with the case of Libya maybe after the collapse of the regime. My priority, the Libyan people's priority now, is to stop the killing. And now, yesterday there was one air flight, military aircraft was shut down in Misrata. And 2 days ago, there were 2 helicopters. Then he using the aircraft to kill the people. And my priority is to stop the killing of the people. And the West and the United States, they are responsible for that. We should not wait until that Gaddafi, he finished Libya, and then we think about the non-flying zone.
But who can do it? I mean, the United States, because of its reputation, can't really afford to do it. The United States says it doesn't want to do it on its own. Is Europe in a better position? And can you use some sort of military force? I mean,
if the United States cannot do it, if the United States cannot do it, if the Arabia cannot do it, then please can you stop talking about democracy? Let the people face their challenge. Let us die for our own cause. Stop talking about that. Stop helping the people and encourage them to be brave, to fight. Stop doing that. Then don't do this for the people and put them in the middle of fire, and then you tell, no, we cannot do it, we have some excuse, we have to consult our alliance. No, this is not the case. Then please stop talking about democracy, stop talking about human rights, stop talking about freedom of speech, stop talking about all this nonsense then. This is nonsense now. If the United States, they didn't take a right position now with the Western countries, then this is a disaster of the century.
Well, while many international leaders have broken ties with Muammar Gaddafi, some of the Libyan leaders' allies remain behind him. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez said on Saturday, "I can't say that I support or am in favor or applaud all the decisions taken by any friend of mine in any part of the world." But then he went on to say that he does support the Libyan government. Chavez has visited Libya 6 times since 1998. In October last year, Chavez went to Tripoli to strengthen political and economic links between the two countries. The countries have since signed a host of accords, from oil agreements to export and transport deals. One of those was a $1 billion investment fund for Libyan Venezuelan projects. AlJazeera's Dima Khatib is in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. She says that Chavez's position on the situation in Libya contrasts with his view of the recent revolution in Egypt.
Actually, it's very interesting to see how the Tunisian, Egyptian and Libyan revolutions have had different reactions on Venezuelans. The Tunisian one passed by almost unnoticed. The Egyptian one triggered very interesting reactions. The pro-Chavez camp identified themselves with them and said it was like their revolution, the Bolivarian revolution, that liberated them from imperialism, and they thought that the Egyptians were doing the same by getting rid of Mubarak, who is an ally of Washington and Israel. While the opposition said, well, we want an Egyptian revolution here against Chavez. Chavez. That was during the Egyptian revolution. Now, the Libyan one is completely different. Chavez's position when he said on Twitter that Gaddafi was facing a civil war, that was a clear indication that Chavez did not consider what's happening in Libya a revolution. So his supporters immediately were opposed to that, and actually indirectly support Gaddafi, while the opposition says, well, we cannot support somebody like Gaddafi, because if you support somebody like Gaddafi, it means that you are capable of doing the same things, which is what they accuse Chavez of being. They think that Gaddafi and Chavez are very similar.
That's all from Washington for now. I'll hand you back to Doha.
All right, Jane, thank you very much. Well, the UN is now mobilizing its agencies to respond to what is feared to be the growing humanitarian crisis within Libya. But Hillel Newer from UN Watch, which keeps an eye on the UN and its performance, is very critical of how the UN has engaged with Libya in the past.
Not only was Libya elected to the Human Rights Council, but sitting on its advisory committee is a man named Jean Ziegler, a Swiss politician who created the Muammar Gaddafi Human Rights Prize in 1989, which has been given to Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, a Holocaust denier, Roger Garaudy, and recently to Erdogan, the Prime Minister of Turkey. So the United Nations also chose Libya to head its World Conference on Racism from 2007 to 2009, the Durban Review Conference. So time and again, the United Nations has rewarded this murderous, racist regime. It's a regime that has systematically persecuted over 1 million black Africans in that country. They're now being used cynically as mercenaries. So all of this has been known, and that the United Nations has not only turned a blind eye to these abuses, but has rewarded this regime. Libya was also the president of the General Assembly only a year ago. Libya, a couple years ago, was sitting on the Security Council. Every door that the United Nations has was open to Libya. Colonel Gaddafi's daughter, Aisha Gaddafi, was a quote-unquote goodwill ambassador of the UNDP.
Well, we can now talk to the former UN prosecutor at The Hague, Payam Akavan. He joins us from Montreal, Canada, where he's a law professor at McGill University. Thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. Just want to get your thoughts on what Mr. Newer was saying there about the UN. Do you agree?
Well, unfortunately, there are many governments on the UN Human Rights Council with very questionable human rights records. And this is a sort of problem which is solved not through changing the UN institutions, but changing the culture of international politics. And certainly the democratic wave that is sweeping throughout the Arab world, that also resulted in unprecedented demonstrations in Iran in the summer of 2009, is ultimately also going to transform the face of the United Nations. The United Nations Charter begins with we the peoples of the United Nations. And what we're witnessing throughout the Middle East and North Africa is the peoples asserting themselves. And I would certainly hope that this will change the very unfortunate culture that has prevailed for so long in the United Nations.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Libya, Mr. Akavan, I mean, it's no stranger to human rights.